Sorry, Helen, I couldn't hear you there.
Yes, we were just muted. I can still hear you well.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Hello, everybody just joining. We're just waiting for Lonray from Shell to arrive and maybe for a few more people to come in, and then we'll start. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to check on Shell, who's joining right now, and see if they're having any issues. Okay, so Kathy is here. And there's Silvana.
Good afternoon, this is Olivier Mahoul from the World Bank, connecting from London.
Hello, Helen. Can you hear me? Okay. I think it was muted. Yeah, I think I was muted there while I was giving my introduction. No one heard that today. Okay, everybody, I'm going to start again. My name is Jeff Geipel. I'm with Engineers Without Borders, and I'm the manager for the extractive-led local economic diversification, or ELLED, community practice, where we bring together the world's experts and practitioners on local content and making the most out of extractive industry activity to lead to economic developments. Today we have a webinar that we tend to hold every 2 months or so on different topics, and because we have such a high kind of count audience, we really get into the nuts and bolts of making these policies work, government policy work, company policy work, and that kind of thing. and get into the details. So today we're going to have two presenters, one from Rio Tinto, Alex, who's going to speak on Rio Tinto's efforts at supplier development and how they do that on a company-wide basis, but then also some examples from in-country operations. And then Lonray from Shell, who works on their Nigerian content program to increase local procurement in Nigeria. He'll also speak to some specific examples from Nigeria in terms of their efforts as well. So again, I think if I haven't mentioned this already, I'm actually at a bit of a noisy location because of some internet problems. So I'm going to mute myself whenever I'm not speaking, and if everyone else could please do the same thing. Over first to Alex from Rio Tinto. And then it'll switch over to yours.
Jeff, thank you. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Excellent. Hope you can all hear me well. Thanks for this chance to share our sustainability strategy and a specific case study close to our hearts in Amrun, in a region in northern Australia. Rio Tinto has been refreshing its sustainability strategy since last year, and local economic development, or more precisely regional economic development, is really at the core of our new refreshed strategy. Let me tell you what it is about. We have divided the strategy into three pillars that have highlighted priorities for us. We want to have a strong foundation in a more consistent way across all of our operations, which is about running a safe, responsible, and profitable business. Our second pillar is about collaborating to enable long-term social and economic benefits. And here, what we want to do differently from what we were doing in the past is precisely going from very local to having more of a regional outlook and being able to understand and partner with understand better the regional economic setting and partner with other companies and also with the public sector to have greater impact. And we've just started that journey, and we're building on areas where we have been traditionally strong, and local procurement is actually one of them. And the example that I will give you today, that I will share with you today, is precisely about local procurement. So we're building on what we do well, but we really want to take this to the next level. And some of the things that we're looking into is attracting new social impact investment, embedding better into our teams their knowledge about local public finances and where our taxes go, and understanding how to unlock the spending of that money better in economic and social development. And the purpose is to have, if you want, greater impact in that area, responding to rising expectations of benefit sharing. And then our last pillar is connecting better to the fourth industrial revolution and the low carbon economy. And we seek to be the producers of the metals and minerals of the future. And we have a portfolio ideally placed for that. We produce already copper and aluminium, which will be needed for wind turbines, for lighter vehicles, so that we can turn to electricity there, etc. And we do not have any fossil fuels in our portfolio any longer. So being leaders of the low carbon economy is part of our sustainability strategy. So let me go to that ambition that I shared with you about upping our game on regional economic development. And we see three elements. One element is really making the most out of the mining value chain. And here's precisely where a lot of our procurement efforts come into play. So all of our assets have local employment and local procurement targets, which are complemented by community investments that we do in education and training to develop a pipeline of employees specialized in the competences that the local labor market will need. We also support local firms so that they can compete more effectively to supply the services that we need. And that includes offering capacity building and technical assistance. We think that let's say, local knowledge and understanding of the local culture is extremely important for that. And the video that I will share with you emphasizes that element. But yes, economic diversification is extremely important, which is why our efforts in training, but also in other ways of partnering, such as providing small grants or facilitating the access to local businesses to other entities that could provide either credit, grants, or technical assistance is important. So we work on both tracks, right? The mining value chain, but also diversification. Then the well-being, and if you want, the social development aspect is quite important for us for two reasons. And one is that very frequently in our case, our own employees are the local communities, not only because we have worked to hire them, but also in places like in Western Australia, these communities have actually been born because of our operations. So they have migrated from other parts of the country or have flown into these parts of the country. And so they become that local community. And in the olden days, we had partnered with government to actually build proper towns. That's not what we do today, but effectively we do have employees as part of our local communities, apart from communities that were there from the beginning. And so enhancing the quality of life of those communities is important, and therefore infrastructure for social activities and for social services are quite important, an important part of our take on regional economic development. My screen is frozen. There we go. So the case study that I want to share with you today is about Amrun. The Amrun mine and shipping facilities are part of a larger aluminium complex we have in Northern Australia. So Rio Tinto is a big bauxite producer. Bauxite is the raw material used to produce aluminium. We have alumina refineries, and we also have aluminium smelters. And part of those operations exist in Northern Australia and also in Quebec, in Canada. We have some facilities in New Zealand, Iceland, and Africa. This case of Amrun is quite special, and I mentioned close to our heart. So we completed last year, we were able to build not only on time, but before time and on budget, part of the new facilities, part of the new aluminium facilities that I just mentioned, which would allow us to extend the life of the original Weipa mine and bauxite complex. And at the peak of the construction of Amrun, we provided jobs to 1,200 people. 75% of these were from Queensland, and 400 of these were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And Amrun will allow us to increase substantially our production in ELLED. Now, the case study is about including traditional owners, local communities, and indigenous population into the employment pool, but also into the procurement opportunities. And these don't happen in a vacuum. They happen against agreements we have already signed with traditional owners. We were among the first companies in Australia to recognize a right to native title. And from the beginning, we have chosen to sign binding agreements with traditional owners. In time, some provinces in Australia have included this as a legal requirement, but it's not always a legal requirement in every country. But one of our traits in community engagement is to have binding agreements. And so these will have specifications with regards to royalties, education and employment, cultural awareness for employees and contractors, cultural heritage management, and then support for Aboriginal businesses. So something that we were aware in Amron was really that the project could not go ahead if it did not have the support and an embrace of traditional owners. So including them in every aspect of the project from the beginning was important. So not only discussing the environmental and social impacts that the project would have and allowing their voice to help us shape prevention and mitigation measures from the beginning, but also the bit on procurement was important. Then again, because it was sitting in that new sustainability approach where we really wanted to increase our impact in benefit sharing with local communities. So what we did, and I'll share a video with you, what we did that we looked very carefully at the details of contracting and our relationship with larger umbrella firms that are our tier one contractors and how they could relate to local communities and increasing the share of information, business information and cultural information between the local population and contractors in order to maximize that opportunity. So let me just go straight to the video. I'm going to change screens here, and we've tested the sound a bit. Let me prepare this. Now, the project, the other thing, before I start the video, the other thing that we did is that we consciously studied ourselves, if you want, as we were doing these adjustments to local procurement and local employment to ensure that we were capturing and learning from our own practice. And so the video that you're going to see is part of that also effort within our projects teams and our communities teams to ensure that we learn as we go.
Our own project learnings process is about capturing our experiences and taking action to enhance future projects by reflecting on the answers to 3 questions: what we would do again, what we would modify next time, and what we would lose completely. Here, we've summarised key findings from the General Services and Local and Indigenous Participation Workshop. On the Amron project, there was a huge community expectation to deliver successful outcomes for local and Indigenous people and businesses. Our commitments to providing local and Indigenous business, employment and training opportunities were formalised through the Local and Indigenous Participation Plan, otherwise known as the LIP. The Amron project was the first of its kind to have a LIP strategy that was made publicly available and provided to our contractors and stakeholders. The LIP model required all bidders for work packages over $1 million Australian dollars to submit their own LIPs, outlining their Indigenous employment, training and local supply targets. This ensured the project had a shared commitment to participation across all elements of its supply chain and provided an opportunity for local and Indigenous businesses to be considered as Tier 2 and Tier 3 supplier opportunities if unable to secure a Tier 1 contract. One of the main ways the Umrun project engaged smaller local businesses was by structuring boutique general services contracts that included local services, road maintenance, temporary facilities and building maintenance. We also put local commuting infrastructure in place to ensure smooth access to the project site for local people. To showcase the opportunities available for local business, members of the team went out into the community to do supplier briefings, sort of like speed dating sessions, where locals could get an understanding of what the Umrun project was and see if they had compatible services to offer. This is something we would definitely do again. In fact, we wish we'd done more of it, because it helps the Umrun project build local knowledge and connect with people directly with those working to deliver the project. What else would we do again? Well, for me, the cultural camps on country were absolutely essential in getting to know our traditional owners and understanding what country means to them. By spending time with traditional owners on country without phones, computers or other distractions, we learned about their culture and they got to know the leadership team on a personal level. We developed a greater understanding and trust of each other. It made the objectives of the LIP real for many people. If a modification were to be made here, it would be to have even further cultural awareness available to more personnel and include contractors who were really interested in this stuff and a little disappointed that they couldn't take part. Now let's pause for a second and ask ourselves what's going on here. Why are camping trips and speed dating sessions on our list of things we should do again? Well, it's about engaging with local communities early to establish positive communication mechanisms to build trust and gain local knowledge. But here's the thing, it must be sincere. Engagement with community fails when it's just about speaking. It also won't work if it's not resourced properly across all project aspects. In retrospect, something we'd modify for next time would be to have an EPCM supervisor embedded within the leadership team of smaller Indigenous contractors to mentor them along their journey to understanding the expectations and core processes of a major construction project. This could have prevented a lot of confusion and frustrations. And if we could do it again, we'd definitely modify the LIP to give it more teeth. Because even though it was effective, it was difficult holding some contractors to their Indigenous employment training and local supply commitments. To fix this, we believe a reward mechanism could be applied to encourage desired behaviours. One more thing we'd modify is to use more than one labour hire contractor on our general services scope of work. On the Umrun project, we had plenty of candidates in the community, but because we used a single labour hire contractor for our general services contract, the net we cast only captured candidates with certain cultural connections. If we'd used a second contractor, we could have broadened our access to community candidates. Success in this area really comes down to understanding the relationships between cultural groups. Again, something to be gained through early, meaningful engagement. Overall, the LIP on the Umrun project was successful and there's nothing we wouldn't do again. It's really a case of making some modifications and starting earlier to increase success. Thanks to everyone who shared their experiences during the workshops on general services and local and Indigenous participation. Look out.
Right. I hope you got the gist of that video. So basically, some of the key success factors of the program was that we made public the strategy. Very often, our local employment and procurement strategies are internal and speak to us mostly, but we're not sharing the thought process and the elements in a systematic way with others, and doing it was important. Putting targets of Indigenous employment on larger contractors was important. Tailoring certain contracts, customizing them to ensure we could pick up as much local content as possible was a third factor. Infrastructure to ensure community access to the project. So facilities of either temporary housing or rooms and beside the project, and buses and access roads were important. The concept of speed dating that you see there was more about facilitating that knowledge and contact between our sales contractors and local communities so that we could know each other better. And then the sixth component is about that, but at the cultural level. So those are the six elements of success of that particular program in Northern Australia, attached to the expansion of our aluminium operations there through the new Amrun mine. We would like to think that we had a good success in terms of the number of contracts and number of local employees. Our spend was mostly Australian there for that project, and we managed to have a good number, 69 suppliers from specifically Cape York in that region, Queensland, which is the broader state, 800, and then from the broader at the national level, 1,200, which in terms of the local economy was quite important for us. Now, the impact was not only for those specifically that participated in the procurement value chain, but also the knock-on effect in the broader region with other elements of our community investment, community engagement was important. So here, diversification and having the opportunities to invest in tourism, agriculture, services, and marine was important. Ensuring that there was an increased purchasing power and more local ownership of homes in the Weipa region was actually quite another important impact of the broader strategy where the Indigenous procurement program sat. So I'll stop there. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Alex. Really enjoyed your remarks, particularly around some of the internal keys to success. I think that all of us sort of on this webinar kind of know the basics, but the actual implementation always seems to be a bit more difficult to have those practices on. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Lonray at Shell. In the meantime, just want to make sure everyone is aware that there is the chat function, and if you start submitting questions via the chat to everyone, I will make sure they are asked during the Q&A, but when the Q&A opens up, you can also unmute yourself and ask a question verbally as well. So it might be a good idea to put some questions down if you want to make sure you don't forget later. So, okay, so Lonray, if you could share your screen, which it looks like you're doing, and you can take it away. We can't hear you, Lonray. Are you called in? Kathy from Shell, are you able to kind of give us a little filler time here while Lonray sorts out his audio?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Just a bit of an overview. Hi, it's Kathy Koo. I'm a subject matter expert at Shell on local content and economic development. Just a little bit, I think some folks who have been on the call before understand Shell's approach to local content, which is a combination of the people, policy, and private sector. So government industry dialogue is very important from the Shell perspective. And what you'll see in some of the Shell examples is that we really try and um, take that broad approach. That's the way Shell teams are set up. And just maybe I could just start with a question back to Rio, and that is on the diversification agenda. I was just curious whether there is a link with government objectives on what they want for diversification for the long term. So maybe I'll leave that question and maybe you can hash it out, and then I'll try and connect Lonray in via our Shell network.
Thanks, Kathy. We'll just wait a minute here while we get that set up. Sorry, sometimes technology is not our friend. Any luck over there, Kathy and Lonray?
Jeff, I just need the dial-in numbers again because I also had problems connecting.
I think Larry has been speaking.
So if
So
you can
he's
send me the dial-in numbers, Jeff, then I will add him in through our Skype.
Okay, Helen, do you have that? Can you put it to the chat?
And also, I think you need an access code, as I remember.
I'm
Yeah.
just checking that Larry is also on has unmuted his system because it seems he's already started his presentation.
He's muted right now, I can see.
Okay.
He's not muted, so I don't know. Helen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, can you send the call-in information that you had there before to via
Yeah,
chat?
I'm putting it in the text the chat right now.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then I will. Okay, I will dial Lonray in after I connect myself. Let's see if that works. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. Yeah. Okay.
Don't worry, in the recorder, we're going to edit all this out and it won't even sound like there was any delay.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. 1 second.
questions.
Okay. Can everyone hear us? Jeff? Yes.
Hello. Hello, Kathy, can you hear me?
Yep. Jeff, can you hear us?
I hear you, yes. Kathy.
Yes, we can.
Great. All right.
Oh, yeah. Apologies, everybody. And Jeff, I was unmuted and for some reason you couldn't hear me. My sincere apologies. Can you hear me now? Please confirm.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hey, Larry.
Okay, good. I'm going to share my desktop, so please let me know when you see it.
So, Lonray, I think that they have your PowerPoint already, so you'll just have to tell Jeff when to change.
Okay, so I don't need to share my screen anymore?
I don't think so, right, Jeff? You've got it there.
Jeff, please confirm. Hello, Jeff.
I think Jeff is.
We can't hear you, Jeff. Yeah. Jeff, can you confirm you can see the slides? Or that you're moving the slides?
It looks like Jeff moving slides. He's got the two presentations on.
Okay, good. So maybe, Lonray, you can just tell them what slide you're on, because you have 12 slides. So
yes.
Just,
okay.
Let us know.
All right. So good afternoon, good morning, everybody, and apologies for the glitch going in. I'm just on the cover page yet. If you have the slide, I will be telling you when I want to move on, since we can manage the technology challenge. So the idea is we want to tell you about Shell Nigeria's transformative initiative in the local content space. And to do that, I will be moving on to the next slide, just so that everybody's on the same page. These are the standard definitions and caution notes for all our external presentations, so I won't bore you with this. I will, however, move to slide 3 and speak a little more to that in slide 3. So let me just hold on a minute for everybody to get to slide number 3.
I think we're on slide 3 right now, Lonray, I believe.
Sorry, Jeff, what did you say?
We're on slide 3 right now, Shell's local content strategy and philosophy.
Excellent, thank you. All right. Now, in Shell, the purpose of the business is to power progress by providing more and cleaner energy, as you may have heard that before. And to deliver that, one of the key enablers of delivering that is our strategy. The strategy is represented by this triangle. And you will see at the top of the triangle, the apex of it, is our strategic ambition. I will come back and talk about that in a bit. Along the next to that is the aspired portfolio, meaning that where do we want to be as a business in terms of generating cash, growing our business, and in terms of emerging opportunities globally. And then the third part of it, of course, is our winning capabilities. What enables us to achieve that? Basically, in terms of customer centricity, our commercial acumen, our use of leverage of technology, delivery of project, and operational excellence. Those are the trusts that enable us to deliver the cash and to our aspiration. But coming back to our strategic ambition, our strategic ambition is underpinned by what we call a strong societal license to operate, meaning beyond compliance and what we do in our business, we seek to ensure that everywhere we do work, we have a strong backing of the society. And that means that in every area, whether it is required by law or not, we set out ambition to be sure that what we do is not only good for business, it's good for society. And along that line is this local content strategy and philosophy for the group. And you'll see that is a speech from the current chief executive. It's a quote from him, meaning that boosting local economies by creating jobs and developing skills and working with local suppliers builds trust. That is one of the things we'll be speaking to today. Specifically in Nigeria, I have to come back home to Nigeria where the context of this discussion is. We'll be talking to you about how Shell companies in Nigeria, particularly SNEPCO, one of which I'll talk about in a bit, develop manpower, build capacities, and grow the local economy in that as part of our business. Let me now move to the next slide. On the next slide, please let me know. Now that you've heard about the global business strategy, which is what I've just set forth, let me take time a bit to talk about how we deliver local content in Nigeria. Now we're bringing it back, we're bringing it home. In Nigeria, we have local content is not just a good to have. It has moved into a regulation. So we have what you call the Nigerian Content Development, Nigerian Oil and Gas Content Development Act, what we call the NOGD Act, that was enacted in 2010. That act sets forth the aspiration of the country to grow capacity, in-country capacity, manufacturing, ability of people to retain value in Nigeria. In Shell Nigeria, to deliver our aspiration, both coming down, stepping down from the global to what our country chair has said, we have these 6 structured approaches that we use. I will deliberately go counterclockwise so I can finish at the specific area with a call-out button. The first one, starting from the 12 o'clock position, is what we call indigenous asset ownership. Basically, this has to do with how we support people to own assets on the back of our operations, meaning that Nigerians to specifically own assets, be it oil fields, be it vehicles, be it marine crafts, choppers, and all the stuff on the back of operations with us. And we have successfully done this. One of the key areas that we've done this is the sale of our assets. Every time a divestment happens, priority has always been given to sale to Nigerian companies. And a few of them are already listed both in the Nigeria and the London Stock Exchange, and I think even in the New York Stock Exchange, who are people who have bought assets from us and have moved on to now become major players locally. The second one, I'm going anti-clockwise, remember, is the infrastructure development. These are areas where we see there's a specific gap in infrastructure and how we partner together with people such that in doing this, we deliver, we address the infrastructure gap and we build capacity in that space. Of course, this is in addition to all our social performance and responsibilities that we do. But in Nigeria, Shell is proud to be a major contribution to infrastructure development, both in terms of roads, bridges, and even hospitals that we do. That we deliver equipment, we help to equip those already built facilities. You may have seen recently in the news where SNEPCO donated cancer treatment equipment to a hospital, cancer hospital in Abuja. This is one of the areas where there was a big gap, and equipment and training was provided to help our facility provide cancer-related treatment to the public. And as a result, the cost of some of the diagnoses has crashed significantly. Then we have the research and development. This is opportunities where we partner with local institutions to identify opportunities in Nigeria to use Nigerian product and also to build capacity in the research and development space. One of the ones we're working on in this phase, which we hope to be able to share with you in future, is the greener solutions in our drilling technology, where we're working with universities to use locally made products which are greener as replacement for drilling fluid. As this opportunity is certified and matured, we hope to be in a position to share this with you later. Then we have supplier development. As you can imagine, this is one of the core areas for people who want to grow business. And we're happy to respond to announce here that part of our business is to make sure that Nigerian companies are majorly beneficiaries of our. And you will see in our sustainability report every year that something in the neighborhood of 94 to 95% of our spend goes to Nigerian companies every year. Then goes human capacity development. This is the area where we train, empower, and equip people to become better skilled at what they do and to deliberately close gaps that exist in the industry. For this one, we partner with different organizations, both the regulator, universities, both local and abroad, to train Nigerians, skill them up for the benefit of coming back home and applying these skills to improve efficiencies and how we deliver oil and gas projects. Finally, is the area which we'll be talking about today, in-country manufacturing. Please, let me just check that you can still hear me. Can you confirm that you can all hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. The last one we're going to be talking about is in-country manufacturing. In in-country manufacturing, I will be telling you a bit about what we do in terms of how we domesticate manufacturing in Nigeria. Now, the specific example we'll be talking about has to do with a SNEPCO operation, Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company, SNEPCO. Now, for the benefit of those who may not know about SNEPCO, let me just do a bit of background. SNEPCO is one of the subsidiaries of Shell in Nigeria, and it operates under a production sharing agreement with our partner government, which is basically represented by NAPIM. And NAPIM is an acronym for the National Petroleum Investment Management Services Company, which represents government in the venture. So as contractors, we as PSC contractors to NAPIM, Shell under the SNEPCO in this particular case operates in the deep water. And one of our major operation in the deep water is the Bunga field. And Bunga field, for the benefit of those who don't know again, Bunga field came into operation in 1993, awarded to Shell, and is in 1,000 meters of water, and is currently in its, I think it is almost in its 20th year of production now. Specifically, moving to the next slide now. So then moving to slide number 5 now.
I think we might be on there. We're on subsea tree refurbishment 1 of 5. Is that the one?
That's slide number 5.
Okay.
Correct. So now specifically on this one, as part of the Bunga operations, and like I said, this is a deep water operation. The Christmas trees are installed, and every time we have to do an intervention and bring in a new tree, there is a long lead time for doing this. This particular challenge we had on this initiative was that we saw an opportunity basically to refurbish existing trees in the Bunga field, and by so doing, help to cut down what would have been a long lead time for delivery of a new tree, and more importantly, build local capacity in the process and reduce huge costs that would have been associated with the procurement, expediting, clearing, and coming to install a new tree, as against just taking out the existing tree, refurbishing it in country, and then bringing it back. Beyond that, as you can imagine already, this was not just good for our reputation. It wasn't just shorter. It was just beautiful for our license to operate, meaning that by doing this, we not only went beyond the fact that we could buy and install, which the law would allowed us to do. It allowed us to basically build a new capacity that did not exist in Nigeria on the back of this initiative. Prior to this time, nobody had ever refurbished a subsidiary in Nigeria. So this was going to be novel or a first mover in the industry for us. Now, let me go on to talk about how we did it. I'm moving on to the next slide now, please.
Yep, you're there.
Okay. Now, because we realized that this was going to be the first time we're doing it, we got the help of a lot of help from technical experts out there. We specifically had an understudy for Brazil and Houston to understand what were the challenges associated with the work and to see those who have done it before to learn from their best practices. That was some of the first thing we did. Then we realized that we needed the OEM to partner, both from the point of the fact that to domesticate the service and also for the assurance process involved. So we developed joint technical capability development with the OEM, and the OEM in this case is GE. I think I mentioned that in the previous slide. And together with them, we now develop a standardized process for delivering this and ensuring quality in the process. Now, the key thing about the deep sea thing is the quality management system. So it's one thing for you to be able to deliver the refurbishment, is for you to meet the certain criteria that was set forth to ensure that it's stringent enough for deep water operations. Now, remember, it's 1 kilometer down. You don't want to go back there for any reason, and it's expensive. Any intervention is expensive. So we needed to assure that the quality will not just be good, it will meet the quality as if it was new. And the other bit was now stakeholder management, of course. Being the first time, you can imagine there were apprehensions, and there was possibility that any failure could be expensive and very costly to the PSC. Then, of course, we also had the apprehension about the fact that the vendor who was doing it themselves, their name was going to be on the was going to be at risk. Any slip would be both of us going down. Besides that, we needed to assure everybody who was involved in the process that this was going to be technically sound and it made sense, both commercially and technically. So there was deep engagement trying to assure everybody that the risk, both technical, marine, otherwise, had factored in and that this was good to go. That, as you can imagine, took quite a bit of time getting there. Now, let me stop there to talk a bit about the challenges. Because of the production sharing agreement, so we are not only in partnership with the government. Remember I mentioned NAPES before. We also had co-venturers, other IOCs who are invested with us. So we had Exxon, we had Chevron, and we also had ENI. And because of that, it was important to make sure that they were on board. Then we have the regulator, DPR, Department of Petroleum Resources, who regulates the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. We needed to make sure that they were on board. And like I said, we needed the OEM. Then the regulator for the Nigerian Nigerian local content space as well, which is basically the Nigerian Content Monitoring and Development Board, NCDMB. We needed to get alignment with all of them as to what we wanted to do, the value of doing it, the risk associated with it, and the benefits that will accrue with success. Now, with all of that, we could also see at the end of the game that clearly one of the biggest drivers for this was that it made the case even more compelling was the fact that it happened during the low oil price period. And as you can imagine, it was good. That was the biggest, that was a natural driver to allow, to enable all many of the stakeholders align with us as to the possible benefit as well. Now, the lead time for the long lead time for the trees itself also helped us, because with the low oil price, long lead, exploring this made sense, and automatically we went forward. Let me just move on to the next slide to show you a bit more about how the trees, the process for the trees. This is the process with the steps were followed. The trees were stripped down, the frames were taken off, stripped, and then a very, very diligent scrutiny and survey report was produced. Based on that, you can see the rebuild was initiated, actuators were installed, and then it was to be installed, to be back installed on subsea, and then function tested. And all of this were successful. We'll move on quickly to the next slide to talk about some of the gains we've seen. Now, what did this do? It was able to, this enabled us to deliver Bonga Phase 2 and 3 early. Instead of what you'll have had an 18-month delivery, we could start getting our trees on 12 months. You can imagine that brought early oil. We had a savings of about $6 million for every refurbished tree. Good for business. The repetition mileage. The previous slide, you saw the picture of us holding a plaque. That was the award we won on the back of this initiative by government. This was given in 2018 by the Minister of State for Petroleum. It was awarded to Shell and SNEPO specifically for this refurbishing work. Big against the industry was the capacity that we had established. So this now became a benchmark for anybody else who wanted to do. You did not have to take a trees out of wait to import trees. You could start doing this, and it opened up a new line of business. And then, of course, it enabled us a partnership. Beyond this immediate one were now the ideas that it prompted. One of them was now to look at what else we could do with OEMs in terms of backward integration and reduce and refurbishment. And that has led us to accelerated well jumper delivery, where we started seeing similar opportunities in using well jumpers and vertical connectors. They have now been refurbished in country, now being used also in deep water and saving time. A similar one is collaboration we've done on the Southern Swamp Associated Gas Gathering project, as we call it SSAGS, where we built and delivered the first twister model ever fabricated in country in Nigeria. And of course, last but not least, GE, the OEM involved, has now invested big in country on the back of local content, seeing the potentials that this could generate. Meaning it was good for us, it was good for the government, and it's good for the OEM as well. Let me just quickly touch on just one more thing, because I know my time is almost up. This is the accelerated well jumper delivery I talked about, just to give you a flavor of what is happening in that space. Now we use and recover jumper spools from fabricated spools. We bring them out, refurbish them, and we bring them back. And we're able to deliver them at much lower cost and faster time. As you can see, we're talking of 8 weeks from as against 3 months. Significant improvement and delivery. Similar thing for the vertical hub, where we've also done similar, we achieved similar cost savings, and we have also achieved significant schedule improvements. Let me just share what some of the other success stories we have, and I will stop there. These are some of the other success stories we have in our Nigerian content story. I'll just run through them from the left to right. The Christmas tree refurbishing is what I just spoke to you about. The second one is the twister that was fabricated on the SSHS project. The Shell Contractor Fund, where we partner Nigerian banks to provide funds at easier, better rates to Nigerian contractors doing business with Shell, is the third one. The fourth one is one of our success stories where we partnered with a Nigerian company to acquire assets. And this is a Caverton story, which some of you may have heard, where Shell Nigeria partnered with Caverton, not only to acquire assets, but also to build capacity, and has now become one of the major helicopter service provider in Nigeria, not just for Shell. They are now doing business big in Nigeria, across the oil and gas industry. Moving down is the acquisition of marine vessels, which is another speaks to indigenous asset acquisition. Nigerian content exhibitions, which would promote services that are being manufactured and provided locally. Then we now have one of the ones where we made clamps, oil and gas clamps for use in pipeline repairs. And we've done them in country, and successfully we've been using them now for the last 4 years. We also have support we provided for fabrication to Nigerian machine tools for both stud bolt making and flanges. That itself is going on. I'll move down very quickly, last but not least, to what we are doing with Nigerian Institute of Welding to provide capacity to do testing and certification of welding. And of course, all the other last 3 pictures at the bottom have to do with people that we are training to grow human capacity in Nigeria. Let me pause there.
Okay, thanks very much. Really interesting stuff. I'm particularly interested in some of the cost pressures, which I think obviously is a big backstory to many companies trying to work on this. So thank you very much for your remarks. And now, without further ado, let's open up the floor to questions. I'm going to start with one just because I have one already teed up here from Alexander Minku, who asked about Rio, if you have worked with your suppliers on due diligence in your own standards in terms of sustainability and ethical standards, and how you went about doing that.
Sorry, Jeff, is that for me or was that for Rio?
For Alex, who might be muted.
It was for Rio.
Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff. Could you repeat the question?
Go ahead. I was saying, Alexander Minku asked about if your supplier capacity building extended to sustainability practices of your suppliers and how you went about doing that.
The capacity building. So yes, the capacity building. So we have different work streams on local capacity building, and some of that work streams do focus on, let's say, those that would potentially be suppliers of ours in the future, and those that are suppliers and still need, reinforcement on, for example, the health and safety practices, etc. So capacity building happens, if you want, before they become suppliers and when they become suppliers. And yes, capacity building does extend beyond suppliers to communities on different aspects, connected to the development investments that we have agreed with them. So yes, it goes beyond that. What we're looking to do in the future is one, hopefully scaling up, but also fine-tuning, if you want, the curricula of technical capacity building so that it is more in tune to the future of work and the transformations that will happen. But we need to be mindful of customizing this as per region. So for example, automation has become stronger in our operations in the Pilbara, but not necessarily in all of our operations in other countries. So that's where the customization is important. And what I foresee going forward is that as more low carbon economy themes come up, for example, more use of renewables, more introduction of energy efficiency, more use of offsets, there will be other strands of capacity building to be done connected to that for community members beyond our suppliers. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thanks very much for that detailed answer. I've got another question here from Lizanne, who asked another question for you, Alex, about your decision to move from local to more regional thinking about this? And maybe if you could, I might add to that, how does that impact, because you work obviously in some areas where you have more than one mine site, and how has that impacted your strategy?
Yes. So look, it's hard to generalize. One of the challenges that we had in Rio Tinto is that many of our practices, even though they followed a corporate level policy, they were really, developed by a particular product group, a particular asset. And so something that we're trying to do now is to have more consistent approach across the globe. So that is part of the story of going from local to regional, because in some locations, yes, we had, if you want, regional economic development approaches, but not in all. So what does this change mean in going from local to regional? So in those places where we had a more local focus, it was more about implementing the community agreement or indigenous traditional owner agreements that we had, and using a local investment fund, if you want, by a certain value, where community members would apply to grants. And then again, depending on these locations, these grants could be anywhere from $5,000, $10,000, $50,000. And what we're trying to do is for these funds not to exist on their own, but actually to be better articulated with public development spending. And to be articulated with other companies that might be operating in that region, so that we can actually invest money in economic activities that could be a bit either larger in size or larger in scale. So it could be more small entrepreneurs by using our funds to be catalysts and exercise leverage to work alongside, if you want, other pockets of money and other policies there. So that's where, by having that greater partnership with public development spending and other companies, we can have a broader regional impact, not just in the immediate community beyond our fence, but in the broader region, so that it has a longer, more lasting impact even after closure of our mine. So those are the steps that it means going from local to regional.
Great, thanks for that. I'll go out to the group. Anyone else has questions, they just need to unmute themselves, then they can ask. And I can go back to the chat questions after, but for now, if anyone has a question they want to ask verbally, go ahead and do that. I can't tell if that's because if everyone is muted, or if it's because people don't have questions. But I've got a number of questions still in the chat, so I can go to them. Maybe Lonray, someone asked about financing of suppliers, and so I'd like to ask you, since Alex touched on it a little bit, could you, Lonray, talk a little bit about how financing came into your work on any of those projects that you mentioned, like
information from one source?
Jeff, can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear you very well.
I was asking about if financing played into any of the projects you just talked about. So you talked about the trees. Can you explain what role financing played if you, for example, work with local financial institutions to secure capital for those businesses?
If I heard you correctly, you are asking what role did finances play in the project and how was finance assessed. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's it, Lonray.
Okay. All right. So the biggest challenge we had was not financing, because the contractor, GE, had access to finance. The biggest challenge we had was more about the technical delivery and alignment of stakeholders on managing the risk to ensure we do not fail. So finances was provided. GE is registered in Nigeria. They access facilities through the Nigerian banks, and I'm sure they probably got some help from their parent country. But that was not a major challenge in delivering the work. Jeff, did I address that?
That's okay. Just a reminder, someone's got a lot of background noise, can they mute themselves if they're not asking a question? And then if anyone else has a question, can they go forward?
This is Alexandra again. I have a follow-up question to my previous question, if it's possible.
Go ahead.
My question would be concerning the sustainability standard. Question to both speakers would be, how do you make sure that you have that you influence deeply and make throughout the value chain?
Sorry, Alex. Whoever's got their TV or something on the background, please mute themselves. And maybe Alex, if you want to just repeat. Sorry about that.
Yes, absolutely no problem. My question is addressed to both speakers and concerns sustainability standards, voluntary sustainability standards for your local suppliers. So my question is, how do you make sure that there are certain standards of sustainability monitored throughout the entire value chain? Do you have any type of monitoring and evaluation in terms of when you work with contractors or with subcontractors or suppliers, if there's any if they observe certain standards in this sense?
Who wants to take that?
Sure, it's Alex Wakata here. I can give it a first stab. First of all, it's I think that we can all acknowledge that sustainability standards in the supply chain is always a challenge, right? So always points for improvement. So from the particular case study that I shared, we were reflecting on one very specific theme, which was indigenous participation. And you saw, our lesson was, yes, we included some clauses to that effect in contracts, which would make it enforceable, but maybe not as developed as we could have. We could have put more piece there. But indigenous employment is not the only sustainability standard. We all know that health and safety is important. Those of us that are subject to slavery regulation and reporting on that, it means that labor aspects are also quite important. So we do have a code of conduct, and we call it different lines of defense, or different types of, if you want, auditing from self-assessment to compliance reporting to actually auditing. And it's actually an area that we're looking into now on how to improve our auditing. So just a long way to say, it's always tricky. Yes, several things are embedded in the contract, and there's multiple points of check, with still room for improvement, we believe, on our side, on let's say audits that have impact, not that are checkboxing exercises, but where we're actually able to transform practices.
Okay, I'm just going to hand over the question asking to Helen at the office of the bank there because it's a little easier for her to read and convey the questions than me while I'm sharing my screen.
Hello, everyone. There's a question from the participant Jingja Lai. Her question for the after the presentation: do you have a program to support the access to finance your suppliers? Example of the supplier chain finance program led by the buyers. For example, if Rio Tinto is the buyer.
Hi, so I understand what the specific program to support is financing. We have different actions if you want to do that, but I can't say it's systematic across all of the assets. It's still, asset by asset, depending on the local partnerships. In the area where, so in the Northern Territory, Northern Queensland area in Australia, where we have this aluminium complex, something new that we did was to support an independent economic development entity for the region that could then in itself operate to provide these types of services. And it's something that we hadn't done elsewhere. So it wasn't a specific program for financing, rather in this case, the support of an entity that would provide multiple services to local communities and suppliers, that being one of them.
Thank you, Alex. And also the next question is also for you as well, asking please to explain how they will approach the capacity building of the SME. Is this something they pay for or deliver, or did they outsource it?
Then again, different models depending on the region. So sometimes we partner up with the local chamber of commerce, with a local development entity when there exists, so that they can provide some training, and other training that is more directly connected to our own operations and knowledge of our operations and knowledge of our HSE system.
Thank you, Alex. And there's also another question.
The more needs we are.
Alex, could you kindly repeat the last one as there was a breakup in the connection?
Sorry, is this about training of SMEs?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So in the training of SMEs, some training we do ourselves, and other training is outsourced, done in partnership, and depending on what the supply is of training abilities in regions, it may be a local chamber of commerce, it could be a local vocation. Who finances that training? It also depends on the different supply and territory. So for example, a very good program we have in Mongolia is partly financed by the GIZ, the German donor agency. And depending on our agreements with local communities, and some of our own funding goes there. We provide some of the training pertaining to our own operations and our own HSE standards, for example.
That's wonderful, Alex. There's also another question for you as well on the regional development program. How is it structured?
Yes, so we're at the beginning of our journey to doing that leap between local and regional. So with a lot of humility, we're in the middle of structuring it. But the things that we envisage in that approach, so we would call it an approach to be customized depending on the countries, is to have an understanding of how public development spending works, and looking for the opportunities to leverage that, make sure it has an expression in a particular region, and to find synergies with that spending. So it involves understanding national, regional, and local public development spending. So that is one element of the approach, which involves new partnerships for us. The other element that we're looking into is catalyzing a impact investment from the new market that is happening there. So we're still in the journey of understanding what it means to structure projects for that. And then the other part that we're learning, or an important component, would be the diversification aspect of it. Then again, the mining value chain and the procurement is something that we've done before, and we think we've done well, and we continue to improve and tweak, as you saw from the video. But it's on the diversification side where we need to enhance our learning.
Thank you, Alex. That's very interesting. Follow this another question to you is how they align with government economic objectives, such as diversification as well as the selection of sectors, for example, tourism. Yes, well, I think my previous answer speaks to that a bit. So something that we're not doing systematically was precisely understanding those development priorities. So I'll tell you an example, actually a recent example from Mongolia. We just held a workshop this Monday with the National Development Agency and two other institutions and the World Bank actually in Mongolia to understand and compare different development plans that included diversification, tourism precisely being one of them. So the step is really understand what is there so that we can find the synergy between our own actions and our own spending. We have full confidence that tourism is compatible with our operations. It happens in the Pilbara, it happens in Quebec, in Canada, and it happens in Mongolia. So it is definitely one of the most frequent, if you want, diversification economic sectors we face. Thank you, Alex. Now, the next question is from the participant to both presenters. They want to hear whether the presenter have any experience of providing online resources to local suppliers in context of capacity building. For example, training materials, tenders information, or other business resource, and how effective or otherwise you have found this kind of approach. I would kindly ask Alex to respond and then Shell. Thank you.
Sure. So yes. So in fact, one of our stronger procurement programs is in the Pilbara, where we have one of our largest product groups, and online there works well. And so yes, there's a portal where potential suppliers can log into to learn the process, but also there are learning tools there. But it depends, right? It depends. Not always online will work, and so therefore other methods of engagement are important. Other methods of a training or teaching, let's say, our processes so that they can hook up to our value chain have to follow other modalities.
Thank you, Alex from Rio Tinto. I will kindly ask Shell to address their comments. Kathy from London, do you have any comments on this?
Maybe we've lost Kathy.
I can still see Kathy is still connected.
Well, maybe I'll suggest Kathy, if you want to, or Laundry, if you are there, if you want to answer that one question, and then because we're about 5 minutes close to the hour, we'll wrap up after that, and maybe if Savannah, I don't know if you want to add anything as well on your end. But first, Kathy and Laundry, are you there?
Well, I think they said that they're gonna redial in. While we wait on that, I will ask the next question from the participant. As some background in Guinea, IFC are working with local extractive sponsors organization who want to build a virtual platform for supplier. So any experience in this area that would be grateful to share. I would defer to see if Rio Tinto have anything that they would like to share. Thank you.
Off the top of my mind, I don't have the details of the challenges in that particular area. We have a joint venture and a non-operated operation there. But overall, the development of these online platforms, I guess it's a really important thing is that it's developed with the user there to understand that logic, and it's a very simple steps that we often forget. But that would be my strongest recommendation: is develop it from the beginning with the user alongside.
Okay, well, we've got 3 minutes left before the hour, so I think we might just have to pass on Shell getting back in time. So I want to thank our presenters today, both Laundry and Kathy from Shell, as well as Alex from Rio Tinto. It was really exciting to get quite a varied experience between Nigeria, Australia, and other parts of the world that Rio Tinto works in. I particularly like a lot of the finance questions that came up, especially in this time of sort of somewhat depressed commodity prices and making that work. I think there's some really inspiring stories here that were told that we can sort of use going forward in our other work around the world, trying to improve local procurement by the mining and oil and gas industry. We're going to do a bit of a summary of this presentation online, and it'll be posted on the COP as well as the Goxie post for this event. And then we encourage people to log on to the COP to provide further comments, or on the Goxie post as well. And this event is recorded, so we're going to post the recording minus a few technical glitch edits online afterwards, and then people can share the webinar recorded to other people around there. So I think that's all for everybody. Unless
hear us now?
Go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yep. Yeah, it's fine. I think that you could just send the emails around from Lanre and myself, and if there are a few questions that we got from Demlami that we weren't able to address, I think Lanre is fine to answer those directly. Yep.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. And yeah, we're speaking all the while, Jeff, but obviously you couldn't hear us. We had a few answers we wanted to pitch in. Unfortunately, I fear we've run out of time.
Yeah.
Please do let us have a question, and we will respond.
Okay, thanks so much. Sorry about that. We've been it's certainly a more technical challenge webinar than the past, so appreciate it. And for that reason, thanks everybody for sticking with us today on what was a bit more of a choppy one in terms of that. So thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.